Hello subscribers, myself Pavan and you are watching Optimistic Coder. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of these tutorials.
Hello guys, in today's video we will be discussing about data operators in Java. So before getting into the topic, let's first understand what is an operator in brief. So an operator is capable of manipulating a certain value of operand. Now for example, if you take an expression given below, that is C is equal to A plus B, where A is assigned with value 5 and B is assigned with value 10, where A and B are going to act as an operand, whereas the plus sign is going to act as an operator, by which we are able to manipulate the values within A and B and store it in C. So this is the way how an operator basically works. So let's have a look on different types of operators provided in Java. So we have arithmetic operators, unary operators, bitwise operators, shift operators, relational operators, logical operators, and assignment operators. So in this video I will be covering arithmetic operators and unary operators, and rest of the operators will be covered in the next videos. So arithmetic operators are going to provide us 5 different types of operators: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and modulo. Now let's have a look on all these operators in Eclipse. Okay, so let's first quickly declare 3 variables of integer data type. Okay, so as I've declared 3 variables, now we will initialize these variables with some value. Okay, so I have initialized these 3 variables with some value. So let's write the code for all the basic arithmetic operations. Okay, so I have written the code. So let's run the program and see the output. So as we can see, all the basic arithmetic operations are working properly. So addition is done, subtraction is done, multiplication is done, so no issues in that. But if you see, in the case of mod and divide, you might have some confusion. That is, if you do division using this /, then you are actually dividing two numbers so that you can get a value that is quotient. So if you do this, if you use this operator, you will be getting the quotient value. But whereas if you use, that is 2. So whereas if you use mod, you will be getting the remainder value, that is 0 in this case. So just remember one thing, that mod is only, or the modulus is only used for getting the remainder, whereas your / symbol, which is used for divide or division, will be only used to get the quotient. Okay, so that is clear for the basic arithmetic operations. Now we will just discuss about the precedence rule. So the precedence rule says that if you have an expression with multiple different operators, then which 2 operands should be solved first. For example, I will just initialize a variable called as r, and I will just give value 0 in that, and here I will just use num3 and I will just initialize it with 10. Okay, so I will just write one small expression. For example, within a bracket I will just write num1 minus num2 plus num3 divided by 5. Okay, and I will be storing this value in our variable r. So if I try to print it, this, what will be printing first? So it's not like that. We can't just go on divide first and then we will subtract it. So it's not the case. So here the precedence rules comes into picture. So first, anything that is in the bracket will be solved. So within this bracket we have something called as num1 minus num2, So we will see the steps one by one. So the first step, 10 minus 5 will be done. So this operation will be done, which will be having value 5. Okay, and 10 divided by 5 remains here as it is. Nothing is done here. In the second step, 5 remains here, and plus operator and division operators are there. So within these two operators, it will check which operator is having the highest precedence. So in this case, we have divide symbol, that is forward slash symbol, or the divide is going to have higher precedence. So we will solve that first. So it will return you 2, and then it will add it up, and your result will be 7. So if you run this program, you can find your result is 7. So this is something called as precedence rule, and you should keep this thing in your mind and don't get confused in precedence plus in mod or divide symbols. So that's for the arithmetic operations. Now let's look after the unary operators. So unary operators are going to provide us two different types of operators, increment and decrement operator. So let's have a look on these two operators in Eclipse. So first we are going to discuss about what is an increment operator, and eventually if you understand what is an increment operator, decrement operator is more or less the same thing. So in increment operator, you are going to just use one operand, and that operand is sufficient enough to perform the operation. So as we have seen in arithmetic operators, they need two operands so that they could perform the operation. Let it be multiplication or division, you need two operands, right? But in case of unary operators, you just need one operand, not more than that. That's why it is named as unary operators. And here in increment operator, the symbol is plus plus, and it works in such a way that it is going to increment your variable value by 1. Now for example, if I declare int count equals 0, and if I try to put an increment operator on count, so it would be count plus plus, and that's it. Increment is been done. And now if I try to print the count value, I should get the value as 1. Okay, so value is coming as 1. Now there is something called as pre-increment and post-increment in increment and decrement operators. So if you see here in this point, you can see count plus plus, it is called as post-increment, whereas plus plus count is called to be as a pre-increment. Now why? Actually, if you see variable, whatever the variable that you are declaring, if that comes first and then you have the operator, that is increment operator, then it is said to be as a post increment. Okay, so variable comes first and then the operator comes. So in this case, in this scenario, the value will be incremented after it has been assigned. Okay, so I think you will not understand at this point of time. Let's print the value and I will just make sure you understand. So just think, I'm performing here post increment and I'm performing here the pre increment operation. And now if I print the count value, you could see if I use post increment or if I use pre increment, the results are more or less the same. So keeping both of these doesn't make that much sense. So why it is said to be as a post or pre, let's understand. So let's first declare a temporary variable. Okay, and now here I will do one thing, that is I will try to store the value, whatever the temporary operators are there, I will try to store the value. So in here you can see the count variable will first, whatever the value it has, now it has 0, so it is going to first store the value. It means it is first going to assign the value inside temp variable, and then it is going to increment count variable. Whereas if I try to do the same thing in pre-increment, things will be a bit different. In this, first the variable count will be incremented by 1 because the operator is in front of the variable, so it is being incremented first, and then the value is being assigned to temp variable. So that is the basic difference between pre-increment and post-increment. So now if I try to print the value of temp, you could see the difference. Let's copy this also. Okay, so now if I run the code, you can find initially the value of count is 0, and here I am performing post increment, but here value of temp is being stored as 0, not as 1, but count is being incremented by 1, but the value stored inside temp is the previous value before increment. Now in case of pre-increment, you can see temp value now here till here, line of execution till this system.out.println count for the first time, its value is 1. So now count is having 1 in its bucket. Now we can see here it is using pre-increment, so that pre-increment is done first and it is then assigning the value to temp variable. So that's the reason why temp value variable is having the value 2 and count is also incremented by 2. So this is the basic and the major difference that you need to understand between pre-increment and post-increment. So if you understand what is an increment and what is a pre-increment and post-increment, then there is nothing difference between decrement operators. Decrement operator is used using one operator, one operand, and in that also we have pre-decrement and post-decrement. So if we are doing as pre-decrement and post-decrement, we can actually find the values are more or less somewhat the same, but in this it is decrementing its value by 1. Okay, so you can see here the first value of temp will be 0 because count is starting with 0, and then count is subtracted, is decremented by 1 value, and then we can find temp as -2 because it is decrementing first and then it is assigning the value inside temp, and then we are printing the value of temp and count, which is same, -2. So that's what we have in unary operators. That's all in today's video. In the next video we will be discussing about rest of the data operators in Java.